We have to get them to go, what's in here, and it has to go into somebody else's brain. And then they have to actually write it all out and quantify it. It kind of sounds basically impossible, doesn't it, as a job? So it's getting that knowledge into kids and having that daily battle, because they don't actually all want to learn either. So sometimes you'll take children who are super, super keen, and they've already read the whole book. And they know I've got children that are doing computing that can code in 6 languages. They're better than I am by miles. And there's some children that don't want to type. And it's trying to work out how do you get everybody to learn, and how do you get that knowledge from one place to the next. So it's worth thinking about, isn't it? How do we do this very difficult thing? Because when we start as teachers, we don't always know. And I was dreadful when I started. I used to get classes to make PowerPoints for hours. And I was like, it's really good. They made a PowerPoint and they know things. But they didn't really know things. They worked really hard because they thought I was kind of nice and they liked me and they didn't want to make me feel sad that I wasn't doing a good job, bless them. This was in my first year as well, so I don't do that anymore. But it's very interesting to think about the techniques that we use and how we develop as teachers over time. When you start teaching, it's actually really frightening, isn't it? Because you stand in front of a room full of little children, or even big children, who are actually quite scary as well, and they all just look at you. And everything you ever knew about anything completely leaves your mind. And you're just like, oh. And that thing of, just stay one page ahead of them in the textbook, that's great. But what if you can't find the textbook? And that's not good enough. And it's all very stressful and not very nice. And it feels a little bit like, in Alice in Wonderland, when she falls down the rabbit hole. And I think I'm less like Alice, and I'm more like the rabbit, going, oh my God, I'm late for meetings. Oh my God, all the time. And I'm actually sort of getting a bit better at that as a grown-up. But I have massive sympathy when children are kind of, I haven't done my homework because, life. And I'm like, I know. I haven't probably marked some of it because I've got to say, I actually managed to think it rather than always say that. But I have massive sympathy for them. And it is a bit like falling down a rabbit hole. Or you could think of it as being like climbing upstairs. We've all got to go up these massive stairs because we have these things to do, like people come and observe us, and you have these impossible tick lists. And they grade us and things, quite frightening, even though they shouldn't, maybe, who knows. Should I say that? Yeah. We have, learning walks, and people have Ofsted, and we have, sometimes senior leadership teams aren't hugely sympathetic. It says maybe it's down a rabbit hole, or maybe it's up some very steep stairs, but there's definitely something difficult about the job. It's not just that we rock up and do exactly what we like. I'm not very good at doing what I'm told, though. It's not my best thing. I wish I could be one of these brilliant conformists who turn up and they're on time. I'm not very good at on time, I'm not very good at on time. So how are we going to get up these stairs? How are we going to move on? How are we going to kind of be the best kind of teachers that we are? I think the thing that I've come to is I am just a bit of a teacher geek, and I love the teaching and I love the learning. I love taking the kids with me. And it is very much about building relationships where you have mutual trust and mutual respect. It's no good barking at children to get them to do things and being horrible, because they'll say something that they shouldn't say, and then they'll just leave. So you have to build these mutual relationships of trust. You have to make it worthwhile for them. You've got to invest something of yourself for them to kind of want to buy into the learning. And I think that's okay. That's an okay thing to do. It's okay to give a bit of yourself to your class. It's okay my cat died recently. Oh, thanks, yeah. It was really sad. And I actually went into work still a bit teary on Monday. As soon as a cat died. And my first years, who were really sweet, actually went, oh, mees. And they were super good the next day. It's having these superhuman relationships, isn't it? I'm not a robot. If I'm sad, then I'm sad when I'm teaching. I'll try my best. I'm pretty good at acting, but I can't do it all the time. Be yourself, be honest. It's a much nicer, much easier way to be. I think as well that it's also worth thinking about, how do we not just engage children, but how do we, express our teacher geekness? How do we really bring everything of ourselves to help the children learn? So it's kind of, I'm trying to think of how to say, it's kind of like being okay with being vulnerable in front of them, and being okay with taking risks and modelling that, not everything goes right. You're asking children to take a really big risk. They're going to sit exams for you, and they might not pass. Hopefully they will, because you're awesome teachers. but you're asking them to do something that's actually quite risky and quite frightening. And it's okay for us to stand up and role model how they cope with taking those kind of risks. So, it's okay. Because actually, I'm horribly dyslexic, and actually I was really lucky that I spell-checked my slides, because one of them had a spelling mistake. So it's really important that we celebrate difference, and that we accept that people not everyone's going to want to sit down and just write. Some people find that really difficult. Some people need to, I have lessons where kids sit under tables, because that's where they're most comfortable learning. And if they're sitting there and